The galaxy was quiet, almost too quiet. For centuries, different races, species, and civilizations coexisted, each thriving in their corner of the universe. From the peaceful green worlds of the Alons to the vast star-filled cities of the Sarathians, the galaxy had come to know peace. No one had ever seen a war of this scale before, until humanity arrived. Humans, with their hunger for exploration, technology, and expansion, had always been a curious species. They quickly became a presence that could not be ignored. But even in their rapid rise to power, humanity had always preferred diplomacy over conflict, negotiation over violence. They made treaties, signed peace pacts, and formed alliances with other species, an effort to show the galaxy that Earth was no threat. Still, there was something about humanity that made others uneasy. It wasn't their technology or their military strength that made others nervous. It was the humans' unpredictability. The way they never fully committed to peace, always holding a little bit of their strength back. And it was this very trait that made the galaxy's leaders worry. In the peaceful city of Galaxis, the capital of the United Galactic Alliance, the air was filled with excitement and anticipation. The representatives of the galaxy's many species had gathered to discuss new trade routes, peace terms, and further cooperation. It seemed like just another meeting, until the moment humanity entered the scene. For weeks, the Alliance had been preparing for this summit. Everything was supposed to go smoothly. Humans, with their military strength and growing technological advancements, were expected to sign agreements that would secure their place in the galaxy's future. It was supposed to be a simple exchange of promises, peace, cooperation, and growth. Yet no one could have predicted what would happen next. The humans arrived in sleek black starships that glimmered like shadows against the bright stars. Their fleet was far smaller than the combined forces of the other races, but there was something about the way the ships moved that commanded attention. The humans were careful to show no aggression, at least not at first. The delegation's leader, Commander Alan Carter, was a seasoned war hero known for his calm demeanor and strategic brilliance. He had fought in countless battles across Earth's history, yet his face revealed no sign of nerves. His sharp eyes scanned the room, noting the faces of the galaxy's leaders, their expressions filled with a mix of curiosity and wariness. Humans had always been viewed as unpredictable, and now they were about to prove just how true that was. Inside the grand meeting hall, the room was silent. The leaders of the Alons, the Zogran Empire, and even the mysterious Sylvans from the far reaches of the galaxy sat in their chairs waiting. And at the front of the room, Earth's representatives were getting ready to speak. Commander Carter stood at the podium. His voice, calm and measured, echoed through the hall as he began to speak. The room hung on his every word. But when he finished, the unexpected happened. "We, the people of Earth, have made a decision," Carter said, his voice growing stronger. "No longer will we bend to the will of the galactic powers. We demand respect on our own terms. And if peace cannot be achieved on those terms, then we are prepared for war." A cold silence followed. No one spoke. The words hung in the air, like a cloud, thick with uncertainty. The leaders of the galaxy exchanged uneasy glances, some looking at each other in disbelief, others with growing concern. War. The word seemed foreign, even dangerous, in a place where peace had reigned for so long, and yet humanity had chosen it. The humans had turned away from years of diplomacy and compromise, and in that one moment, they had shaken the foundation of the galaxy. Carter continued, his eyes now fixed on the representatives, his voice resolute. "We have the strength, the technology, and the willpower to defend ourselves, but we also offer a chance for peace if you can meet us on equal ground." The galaxy's leaders were stunned. For a long moment, no one said a word. The usual diplomats, who had spent years negotiating peace between different species, were speechless. The quiet hum of the room made it feel as though time had frozen. Outside, the city of Galaxis remained serene, completely unaware of the storm that was beginning to form. The peaceful skies dotted with floating city structures and lush gardens hid the chaos that was slowly starting to unfold. But back inside the meeting hall, the calm was deceptive. The galaxy's representatives had no idea how deep humanity's resolve ran. They had no idea that this moment, this decision, would set off a chain of events that would change the galaxy forever. The first sign of trouble came quietly, a small but deliberate gesture from the Zogran delegation. A fleet of their ships began to reposition itself as though readying for something. A whisper of tension spread through the room. The quiet moments were over. The calm before the storm had passed. The galaxy's peace was crumbling. Commander Carter turned away from the podium, his eyes meeting those of his fellow human delegates. He knew what came next. War or peace, it would be decided soon enough. And whatever path humanity chose, the galaxy would have no choice but to watch. The calm had ended. The storm was coming. The representatives sat in stunned silence. The room was filled with an energy so thick, it could almost be touched. The words spoken by Commander Alan Carter had rippled through the galaxy, shaking the foundations of peace. Humanity had just declared their stance. No more waiting in the shadows, no more passive agreements. The era of diplomacy was at risk of being shattered, and in its place a new era was beginning, one where humanity would no longer remain silent. Outside, the peaceful skyline of Galaxis, the center of the United Galactic Alliance, looked unchanged. Towering buildings made of shimmering metal caught the light of distant stars, while floating transport pods glided smoothly through the air. It was a serene image, an image that had never known conflict. But now, beneath that tranquil surface, an invisible tension had begun to grow, and it was spreading fast. Humanity had always been known for their ingenuity and adaptability, but their unpredictability was what made them both feared and admired. In the years since they had entered the galactic stage, Earth had maintained a relatively low profile, focusing on their technological advancements and learning the ways of the galaxy. Yet today, it was clear that humanity had been holding something back. A strength, a resolve, that was now unleashed. The alien representatives, who had grown accustomed to their peaceful negotiations and shared resources, were beginning to feel a sense of unease. Commander Carter's words had not only unsettled the room but also each leader's sense of security. They had known humanity as a race eager for peace, one willing to listen and reason. But now, humanity was demanding respect. The question was why? Why had they chosen this path? The aliens, a peaceful race known for their deep spiritual connection with nature, were the first to speak. Their leader, Elara, a calm and wise figure, rose to her feet. "Commander Carter," she began, her voice gentle yet firm. "You speak of respect, but what does that mean for the future of the galaxy? We have all worked together to build something peaceful, and now you ask us to abandon it. Why?" The room turned to look at Carter, his face unreadable. He had expected this. The galaxy's leaders, despite their power and influence, had never been forced to face a true challenge like this. It wasn't just about what humanity was offering, it was about the strength they were willing to stand behind. Carter stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "Respect, Ambassador Elara, means that Earth will no longer be treated as a lesser power. For too long, humanity has been asked to step aside, to remain in the background. We have listened. We have worked with you. But our patience has limits. We seek not to destroy what we've built, but to stand alongside you, on equal ground. If we cannot find a way to work together, then we will no longer be content to remain silent." The room was quiet again, but this time there was a different kind of tension. The humans were not backing down, and that realization was like a ripple in the calm surface of a pond spreading outward. Across the galaxy, the news would spread quickly. Humanity was no longer willing to compromise. And as the representatives exchanged uncertain glances, a new question began to form in their minds. What would this mean for the galaxy's future? Suddenly, there was movement from the Zogran delegation, a race known for their calculated strategies and formidable military presence. Zogran Prime, the leader of their forces, stood up, his deep voice cutting through the room. Humanity may have strength, but strength alone does not command respect. If you want to be treated as equals, you must prove it. His words were not a threat, but a challenge. And for the first time, a cold realization settled in the room. This was not just a matter of diplomacy. This was the beginning of something far more significant. Commander Carter didn't flinch. Instead, he spoke, his tone steady and clear. We are prepared to prove it, Zogran Prime. Earth's will is unwavering, and our resolve is stronger than any force you've seen. We are not afraid to defend our future if that's what it takes. The Zograns exchanged looks. It was clear that they were not expecting such a firm stance from humanity. The other races, who had previously seen humans as a species eager to please, now realized the depth of humanity's determination. And as each representative processed the weight of what had just been set into motion, the tension in the room grew unbearable. The quiet hum of the hall seemed to grow louder, echoing the unease in every heart. Would this meeting mark the beginning of something new, or would it tear apart the fragile peace they had fought so hard to maintain? Outside, the city continued to shine, oblivious to the shifting tides of galactic power. But inside, the seeds of uncertainty had been planted, and nothing would ever be the same again. What would the other species do now? Would they challenge humanity? Or would they try to find a way to make peace? The answers were still unclear, but one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The next move was theirs. The future was no longer written in the stars. It was being written right here, in this moment. The Yaoan. News of Earth's bold declaration had already spread across the galaxy like waves through space. In distant systems, governments paused their daily operations. Fleets stayed docked in orbit, waiting. And in hidden corners of the universe, ancient species watched silently, remembering old warnings that now seemed real again. On Galaxis, the political center of the United Galactic Alliance, everything appeared calm, but beneath the surface, nothing was. The great meeting hall, once a symbol of unity, had turned into a place of deep tension. No one had expected humanity, one of the youngest races among them, to rise and speak with such clarity and confidence. That night, the city lights sparkled, but inside the human quarters, Commander Alan Carter sat alone reviewing messages from Earth. Political leaders were standing by, scientists and military officers offering advice, and the people, billions of them, were watching, waiting, hoping. But there was something else now. The silence from other species wasn't peace, it was hesitation, and hesitation often came before decisions that changed the future. The next morning, the Galactic Council called for a private meeting. Just a few high-ranking members were allowed to attend. The Alons, the Zograns, the Sylvans, and now, the humans. This was not a debate. This was something else, something closer to judgment. The room they met in was smaller than the public chamber. No reporters, no observers, just the council's inner circle. They sat around a smooth round table, glowing slightly from embedded starlight crystals. The leaders stared at Carter, but this time not with fear. Now it was calculation. They were trying to understand Earth's true goal. Ilara, the calm and wise leader of the Alons, began. Commander Carter, you say you want equality, respect, and that your people will stand for nothing less. But we must ask, what has changed? Why now? Carter leaned forward, his voice steady. Because for years we've asked to be heard, and we were only ever listened to when it was convenient. Humanity has contributed resources, technology, and ideas. Yet our warnings are ignored. Our views are treated as suggestions. We've grown, Ambassador. We've become stronger and more aware. And now we're asking for what's fair. Zogran Prime narrowed his eyes. You speak of fairness, but others see this as pressure. You arrive with your fleet, speak strong words, and expect us to welcome you as equals. That is not how unity works. Carter's tone remained calm. We didn't threaten anyone. We didn't ask for submission. We asked for balance. But if balance is impossible without discomfort, then perhaps the system isn't as stable as you believed. That last sentence echoed in the minds of everyone in the room. The system wasn't as stable. It had appeared strong, but it was fragile beneath the surface. Humanity hadn't broken anything. It had revealed a truth others had chosen to ignore. Just then, a quiet chime echoed in the chamber. A message had come in. The council assistant entered and whispered something into Elara's ear. Her expression changed. "We have just received word that several mid-tier alliance worlds are beginning discussions with Earth independently," she said softly. "They are asking if humanity is offering new partnerships." A silence filled the room. This wasn't what anyone had expected. Other species, smaller ones often overlooked by the larger powers, were now turning toward humanity. Not because they wanted conflict, but because they saw an opportunity for something different. A new voice in the galaxy. One that might finally listen to theirs. The Sylvan emissary, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. His voice was slow and careful, like someone measuring each word. "Perhaps the fear is not that Earth will bring chaos, but that Earth will bring change. And change often comes before progress." Even Zogran Prime couldn't ignore that. He looked at Carter again, but this time with a new kind of curiosity. Outside the room, a quiet shift had begun. Across the galaxy, species that had remained silent were beginning to ask questions. Who decides who leads? Who decides who gets a voice? And why should that voice not belong to Earth? Commander Carter knew this wasn't the end of the discussion. This was only the beginning. A movement had started not through force but through courage, and now the galaxy had to choose. Hold on to the old ways or face the new reality that was forming right in front of them. The council meeting ended with no vote, no formal decision. But the atmosphere had changed. Where there had been resistance, there was now uncertainty, and uncertainty was the first step toward something new. As Carter left the room, walking through the quiet halls of Galaxis, he could feel it. The storm hadn't come yet, but the winds were shifting. And somewhere out there, the galaxy was starting to listen. The stars above Galaxis shone brighter that night, as if the universe itself was paying attention. Across the galaxy, the usual silence of deep space was replaced by whispers, quiet, cautious whispers about Earth. Small planets, ignored by the great powers for years, were now asking questions they had never dared to ask before. In the communications room of the Earth delegation quarters, Commander Alan Carter stood before a large screen. Images from a dozen worlds flickered across it, leaders, scholars, and citizens all wanting to speak with him. They didn't shout or demand. They simply asked, "What does humanity want? And more importantly, what can we build together?" This wasn't just about Earth anymore. A shift was happening, one that couldn't be stopped. But not everyone welcomed this change. Within a hidden chamber deep beneath the central council tower, a private meeting was taking place. This room was ancient, built before many of the newer member species had even discovered fire. Only the oldest, most powerful council members knew of its existence. They gathered here not to discuss, but to plan. Elara, the gentle Elan leader, was not among them. Neither was the Sylvan emissary who had supported Earth's call for fairness. Instead, it was leaders who feared change, leaders who had benefited from the galaxy's silence and structure for too long. One of them, the cold and analytical leader of the Dravari species, spoke in a low voice. "Earth is becoming a symbol, not of rebellion but of reform. If that idea spread, we will no longer control the direction of the galaxy." Another added, "We must not act with aggression, but we must prepare to guide the direction of this change before it grows beyond us." The decision was not to resist Earth directly, but to shape the story, to control how others saw humanity. Whisper campaigns were planned. Messages would be spread, stories of Earth's ambition, Earth's independence, Earth's unpredictability. No lies, just carefully shaped truths. Meanwhile, back at the Earth delegation, Carter was preparing for a second public speech, one that would be broadcast across hundreds of systems. His advisors were nervous. Some suggested softening the message. Others feared what the galaxy might think. But Carter knew they had already reached a point where silence would be misunderstood. He needed to speak. And this time, not just for Earth, but for all those who had reached out, quietly, hopefully. As he stood before the galactic broadcast sphere, a soft blue light surrounded him. Billions were watching, maybe even more. This was no longer just politics. This was history being written in real time. He began not with a challenge, but with a question. What if respect is not something to be demanded, but shared? The words echoed through the galaxy. He didn't speak of Earth's strength or independence. Instead, he spoke of shared struggles, of young civilizations rising, only to be told to wait, of older powers afraid to let go of control. And most importantly, he spoke of unity, not built on fear or silence, but on equal voices. On distant worlds, small leaders nodded quietly. They had waited a long time to hear someone say this. In the council hall, reactions were mixed. Some felt inspired. Others looked uncomfortable, but no one could deny the response. Within minutes, support messages began flowing in from unlikely places, mining colonies, research outposts, even neutral zones that had stayed silent for decades. Carter finished with a simple promise. Earth will not force a future on the galaxy. But we will not step back from it either. We believe in peace. But peace must come with fairness, with dignity, and with a voice for all. As the message ended, the stars above Galaxis seemed to shift. The galaxy was waking up, not to chaos but to possibility. And somewhere, far from the center of power, a young leader on a small moon heard Carter's words and whispered to herself, "Maybe it's finally our time to be heard." The movement had begun, quietly, unshakably, and those who once held all the control now realized something new was rising and it could no longer be stopped. In the days that followed Commander Carter's broadcast, something remarkable began to happen. Galactic news hubs, which once only focused on the Central Council's activities, now featured interviews with voices rarely heard, scientists from fringe colonies, historians from overlooked species, and young leaders with no seat in the Great Hall. They were all talking about the same thing, Earth's message. Not just the words, but the feeling behind them. Hope, fairness, change. And the change wasn't just in words, it was visible in actions. Small alliances were forming. Civilizations that once stood alone were reaching out to each other, creating their own discussions. For the first time in decades, they weren't waiting for permission from the core powers. They were acting. Inside the council, some were worried. Not because of Earth's actions, but because control was slipping. Not through conflict, but through connection. But amid all of this, something unexpected arrived. A message, not through official channels, not sent by any known government. It came from deep space, far beyond the outer colonies, from a region known only in myth and mystery. A voice that hadn't spoken in over 1,000 galactic cycles. The message was brief, spoken in perfect galactic standard. Humanity has spoken the truth, and we are listening. No one knew who sent it. The origin of the transmission was traced to the edge of known space, a place where ancient ruins float in silence and even automated probes don't return. The Council had long believed that no intelligent life remained out there. Some called it the Veil Zone, others called it the grave of civilizations. Suddenly, that grave had spoken. Speculation spread like solar flares. Who were they? Why now? And most importantly, why respond to Earth? In the Earth delegation, Carter and his team worked quietly, reviewing the signal over and over. One thing was clear. It wasn't fake. The energy pattern, the signal format, and the timestamp suggested a technology even Earth couldn't fully explain. Dr. Ilara Min, Earth's top xenolinguist, studied the transmission for hours. They're not just listening, she said softly. They're watching, waiting, and maybe deciding. What no one said out loud was that this silent force, whoever they were, had stayed hidden through wars, treaties, and galactic reshaping. And now, they had chosen to speak because of Earth. The Council called an emergency meeting. But this time Earth wasn't the only one asking questions. The newer worlds, small in power but large in number, wanted answers. Who had kept this secret? Why were these ancient beings ignored or dismissed for so long? And what else had the core powers hidden? The pressure was building, not from threats, but from voices, rising together, asking for truth. In the quiet before the council gathered again, Carter stood alone in the observation deck, watching the stars. He thought about Earth, about how they'd arrived here, not through fear, but through clarity. They had refused silence, and in doing so they had awakened something far greater than anyone expected. He didn't know what the next message would be, or what these ancient watchers truly wanted. But one thing was certain: humanity had stepped forward with words. And those words were no longer echoing alone. They were being heard. They were stirring the unknown. And now, the galaxy was not just watching, it was holding its breath. The council chamber, once a symbol of power and order, felt different now. Not louder, not chaotic, just uncertain, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Every representative had arrived early. That alone was a sign. Species who normally ignored meetings unless it concerned their direct interests were now seated, alert and watching the center floor, because today, something unknown stood just beyond the edge of everything they believed they controlled. The mysterious message from the far reaches of space had not been followed by another, but its silence felt louder than any voice. The galaxy now waited not in fear but in wonder. Commander Alan Carter walked into the chamber slowly without announcement. He didn't wear any special uniform, just Earth's simple delegation suit. No symbols, no medals, just presence. And yet, every eye turned to him. The High Speaker of the Council, a being with thousands of years of political survival behind it, gave a brief nod. "You have the floor," it said, but the usual weight behind the words was gone. It knew something had shifted. Everyone did. Carter began not with a speech but with a story. He spoke of Earth's early days in space, how they weren't welcomed with open arms, how treaties came slow and trust even slower, how, even as humanity learned the languages and customs of others, they were told, gently but clearly, to remain quiet, to observe. But silence, Carter said, isn't the same as peace. And listening doesn't mean agreement. He paused, letting that settle. He then spoke of the signal, the one sent from the edge of the galaxy, the one that proved Earth had been heard by something older, deeper, and possibly more advanced than anything in the council chambers. "I don't know who they are," he admitted. "None of us do. But they chose to speak now, not during any war, not during any crisis. They chose this moment. A moment when Earth asked the galaxy to rethink not its laws, but its habits." More silence. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, small delegations stood, not in protest but in quiet agreement. A young diplomat from the Takari moon colonies raised a small flag. "Our world joins Earth's call, not for power, but for equal voice." Then a representative from the oceanic world of Tharasha, who had never spoken in council before, projected a soft blue light, Tharasha's sign of unity. Even the long, silent archivists of Kol stirred. Their mechanical envoy flickered to life and stated in perfect tone, "The future must belong to more than memory." It was no rebellion, it was a ripple, a wave, calm but certain. The council wasn't collapsing. It was expanding into something new, not because of force, but because truth had been spoken clearly, and too many had been waiting for the chance to say, "We feel the same." Still, there were those who hesitated, those who feared change, even peaceful change. One elder diplomat asked Carter, What? If we're not ready? What if those ancient watchers bring disruption? Carter smiled, not arrogantly but with calm confidence. Then we meet them with honesty, together, as equals, not behind walls but across a shared table. His words didn't promise perfection, only courage. The vote was not dramatic. It didn't end in cheers. But when the results showed a majority, in favor of restructuring the council to give equal voice to every world, large and small, it was history. A new beacon was lit above the council tower that night, not to signal victory, but to mark a beginning. Back on Earth, children looked up at the stars and knew something had changed, not just out there but everywhere, and far beyond the known systems in the place where the first message had come from. A new signal was quietly received, a single phrase in clear ancient language. They chose understanding. We will come. Darto. Galaxy was no longer waiting for the future. It was already walking into it, together.